Bjorn Borg surprises Alex Eala with his most treasured possession. Bjorn Borg took Alexandra Eala completely by surprise with a gift unlike any other. His golden racket. It is the most irreplaceable artifact in the entire documented history of Swedish tennis. The reason he chose her, above all the players in the world today, will move you in ways you are not prepared for. There was no ceremony, no staged sponsorship activation, no PR campaign crafted by brand managers in a conference room somewhere. What unfolded in that private Stockholm space was entirely raw and real. A 68-year-old Swedish legend, a man who had just survived a cancer operation and stared death in the face through the brutal pages of his 2025 autobiography, sitting across from a 20-year-old girl from the Philippines. The sentimental voltage of that moment was so powerful that even those who witnessed it still struggled to speak about it without their voices breaking. But before the story reaches its emotional peak, you need to understand one essential truth. The golden racket did not begin with Björn Borg as its owner. It was the very object that pulled a 9-year-old boy in Södertälje, Sweden, away from ice hockey, and toward 11 Grand Slam championships, 5 consecutive Wimbledon titles, and a legacy so towering that the sport still measures greatness against it 5 decades later. That racket was the genesis of everything Borg ever became. And he gave it to Alexandra Eala. Stay with every single word of what comes next, because the story behind that decision will permanently change the way you think about what tennis legends owe their sport. The story of the golden racket. There is the version of tennis that begins with Grand Slams, rankings, seedings, draws, and points accumulated over years of elite competition. And then there is the version that begins in 1966, in a modest flat in Södertälje, Sweden, where a man named Björn Borg entered a table tennis competition, and won a prize that would, without his knowing it, alter the course of an entire sport. The prize was a wooden tennis racket. Strung with gut and framed in a warm amber tone, it had a glow that family members would later describe, almost universally, as golden. Not golden in a metaphorical sense. Literally glowing, catching the warm afternoon light through apartment windows in a way that made it feel significant, even before anyone had intentionally assigned it any meaning. Bjorn gave it to his son, Bjorn. He was 9 years old. There was no ceremony, no instruction, no particular belief that the gesture would matter beyond a child's immediate delight at receiving something new. He simply handed it to him. The quiet, unplanned kindness of a father sharing something with a son who would find his own relationship with it. What happened next became the foundation of one of the most remarkable origin stories in all of sport. Borg carried that racket to the walls of his apartment building in Södertälje and struck the concrete, for hours that stretched into days, and days that accumulated into months of solitary, obsessive repetition. No coach, no structured program. No junior pathway guiding his development through Sweden's well-established tennis system. Just a concrete wall, a boy, and a golden racket his father had won at a table tennis competition. By 13, Borg had been selected for the Swedish junior national team. At 15, he won his first Davis Cup match, the youngest player in Swedish history to do so. At 17, he claimed his first French Open title. 5 consecutive Wimbledon championships followed, from 1976 to 1980. 6 Roland Garros crowns in total. 11 Grand Slams overall, before a retirement at just 26 that the tennis world refused to fully accept. All of it began with that racket. And now, he has passed it to Alexandra Eala. The phenomenon, the racket, and the reckoning, the trophies, the Davis Cup triumphs, and the cultural shockwave that followed. Borgmania was a phenomenon unlike anything tennis had ever seen. Teenagers screamed his name with a frantic, almost unhinged intensity that had never before attached itself to a tennis player. It was the kind of adulation reserved for rock stars, not athletes. Through all of it, Borg kept the golden racket. It never hung in a museum. It never appeared in a commercial. It was never donated to any of the prestigious tennis halls of fame that would eventually honor his career. It remained personal, private, and protected. The one object that existed before everything else, and therefore carried more weight than anything that came after. Everything started on that racket, Borg would later tell the journalist who compiled his 2025 autobiography, Heartbeats. Before coaching, before Wimbledon, before any of it, there was just a wall and that racket. I never wanted to give it away because it felt like giving up the beginning. He held on to that belief for nearly 60 years. It was Alexandra Eala's match in Miami that made him reconsider every assumption he had built a lifetime around. The diagnosis that changed everything in 2023, Bjorn Borg was diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. Serious enough to require emergency surgical intervention, serious enough that the medical team around him spoke in language that offered no comfortable reassurance. True to form, he told almost no one. Throughout his entire career, Borg had been defined by emotional composure under the most extreme competitive pressure imaginable. His rivals called him the Iceman, not because of any coldness in his game, but because of his expression. No rage, no visible joy, no discernible emotional signal of any kind. Only the constant, relentless output of a competitor so disconnected from the noise of performance that nothing his opponents did could find a crack in him. Davis Cup rivals described the particular unease of playing him, frightening not because of his shots, but because of his face. He absorbed the cancer diagnosis with that same composure. Emergency surgery was carried out quietly. His 2024 recovery was physically grueling and conducted entirely outside of public awareness. The tennis world, the media, former colleagues, and the legions of fans who had followed him since the early 1970s knew absolutely nothing. Borg had spent his decades after retirement cultivating a solitude so complete that his silence during illness was indistinguishable from his silence in health. But cancer broke something internal that composure could not contain. Very little had ever truly broken Bjorn Borg. The data of his life makes that plain. Yet confronting mortality with a particular precision that serious illness demands forces a person to face questions that the adrenaline of competition had always kept at a comfortable distance. What did his career actually mean beyond the numbers? What had he given the sport that built him? What remained to be done? Not professionally, not for financial gain, but humanly, in terms of passing something genuine and meaningful to the generation of tennis players carrying the sport forward. During his recovery, he began writing. Heartbeats, his autobiography, was released in 2025. It disclosed his cancer diagnosis in a matter-of-fact tone that stunned readers who had expected the same emotional restraint that had defined every public statement he had ever made. He described preparing for surgery. He described the specific quality of fear that sets in when doctors stop offering words of comfort. He described lying in a recovery room with a clarity of mind that anesthesia somehow could not blur, and thinking about the golden racket, sitting quietly in storage somewhere, and what would happen to it after he was gone. Everything started on that racket, he told the journalist assembling his story. Before coaches, before Wimbledon, there was nothing except that racket and a wall. Here is the rewritten and cleaned-up continuation. How history really travels. History does not travel through trophies displayed in public spaces. Awards, honors, and monuments have their place. They carry recognition, elegance, and a weight that is genuinely deserved. But they belong to institutions. They live in museums and display cabinets, in official halls of fame and glass-lined corridors where visitors encounter them at a distance, separated from any real human contact. History travels through objects passed between hands, through the rare, irreplaceable transfer of something private from one life into another, carrying not just the object itself, but the entire accumulated meaning of every moment and every story that preceded the exchange. The choices are embedded in what was built near it, and in the person it helped shape. Bjorn Borg handed a golden racket to a 9-year-old boy, and 11 Grand Slam championships followed. A career that redefined what was possible in sport. And then Bjorn Borg held that same object for 68 years. Through the abandonment of ice hockey, through the conquests at Wimbledon, through early retirement and the silence of decades, through cancer and surgery and the long, difficult road of recovery, through the experience of confronting his own mortality with a clarity that only serious illness can enforce. And then, deliberately and completely, with full awareness of every layer of significance involved, he placed it in the hands of Alexandra Eala. What it really means, what does that transfer actually mean? Not in commercial terms. Not in the shallow symbolic sense that media coverage tends to attach to these moments. What does it mean at its deepest level? Where do these transactions truly take place? It means that Borg recognized in Eala the specific quality that his father's racket first unlocked in him. Not skill, not technical superiority, not the measurable physical gifts that coaches identify and develop through organized junior programs. Something older and harder to name than any of that. What a 9-year-old Bjorn demonstrated against that concrete wall in Södertälje, spending hours that accumulated into months of solitary, obsessive repetition, without outside guidance, without institutional support, without anyone telling him that what he was doing would ultimately amount to anything beyond the immediate satisfaction of the act itself, was self-generated conviction. An internal architecture of pursuit that does not require external confirmation to sustain effort, because the effort carries its own justification. The capacity to work without an audience, without acknowledgement, without any guarantee that the investment will eventually produce returns proportionate to the sacrifice. Alexandra Eala demonstrated that same quality across 7 years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, grinding through training sessions that no one outside the facility observed, producing results the tennis world wouldn't recognize until Miami in 2025. The same self-sufficient, internally driven work ethic that once propelled a 9-year-old toward a concrete wall was now guiding a 20-year-old toward courts that would eventually return everything, compounded. Borg saw it. He recognized it from the inside. As someone who had spent 68 years knowing exactly how that quality feels when it belongs to you, and knowing just as precisely how it looks from the outside when it belongs to someone else. The golden racket he sent to Eala carries a message that extends well beyond the two people involved. It communicates something essential about what the greatest athletes owe the generations that follow them. Not merely the passive, comfortable debt of a distinguished example, but the active, personal, costly debt of intentional investment. Of identifying someone who carries the very trait that built you, and surrendering the most irreplaceable thing you own in order to tell them, I see it in you. It was always meant to go further than me. A message that travels further than inspiration. What Borg surrendered is genuinely irreplaceable. And the significance of where that quality now resides, and where it is headed, reaches far beyond two people in a private room in Stockholm. Think about what this moment means for every young athlete in the Philippines watching this story unfold. For every junior player across Southeast Asia competing within systems and facilities that receive a fraction of the institutional funding directed toward American and European pathways. For every talented kid grinding in an Asia-Pacific training program that the traditional tennis world has historically overlooked, underfunded, and underestimated. Borg's gesture operates at a frequency deeper than inspiration. Inspiration is surface level, it moves you briefly and then fades. What this moment delivers is something more durable. It is verification. It is the unambiguous confirmation, from the greatest the sport has ever produced, that excellence does not have a continent of origin. That the trait which builds champions, that self-sustaining, internally driven, audience-independent hunger, can live just as powerfully in a girl from the Philippines as it once lived in a boy from Sweden. And it redefines what the greatest athletes truly owe the generations that follow them. Not merely the passive, comfortable debt of being a distinguished example from a safe distance, but the active, costly, deeply personal obligation of paying close enough attention to see someone, really see them, and then giving up the most irreplaceable thing you own to tell them so. That is the debt Bjorn Borg chose to honor. That is what the golden racket now carries. Here is the rewritten and polished final closing passage. The debt that cannot be passive. The greatest athletes in any sport owe an active obligation to the generations that come after them. Not merely the comfortable, passive debt of being a celebrated example, of having your records studied and your highlights replayed. That kind of legacy requires nothing of you. Simply exist. The real debt is harder. It is the costly, intentional work of paying close enough attention to identify someone who carries the exact trait that once built you, and then giving up something truly irreplaceable to communicate that you see it in them. That act of recognition, of deliberate personal investment, is what separates a legend who inspired from a legend who transferred something. That is what makes this moment so much larger than a gift. Consider where that message travels. For every young athlete in the Philippines watching this story. For every junior player across Southeast Asia training in facilities that receive a fraction of the funding routinely directed toward European and American